Hey guys, Eric in the alley again. Yesterday, I did one of my buddies, his son, he bought an old 93 F-150. It was pretty whooped. His neighbor did a lot of work on it. He put, from what he told me, it didn't have any compression in number one and number two, and he told him a timing chain would fix it. They put the timing chain on, bent push rods, new distributor, new, and everything he could, wires, plugs, EGR, IAC motor, everything. And it was, yeah, I wouldn't recommend putting anything in it, but curiosity, that kind of gets you. I did, fixed a couple things on it, got it to idle. I mean, didn't put the money in it, of course. It was just the spread pins on the coil connector. It was cracked, loose ground. I mean, wait till you see the battery. I'll put a couple pictures of this thing in there, but I mean, even if you got something that bad, if you break out the scope, everything's like a little bit of a learning experience. And on one hand, I'm real happy. It led me right to, telling me that, that don't put no more money in this. But what I did was an RC test, and I tried it with the current first, or actually I used the voltage first. I'm sorry, because the battery was around 12.5. I mean, even with running it was, pretty low. But I did it with voltage first, and what I seen is there was almost a kind of a ripple to it on an RC test. I mean, but it's just the same 8 patterns over and over again, I believe. And if I was just on the voltage, I might have, stuck with that theory. But then I went on, I put an amp clamp and voltage, and I'll show you the waveform what I got. They both kind of roll. And what I'm figuring is even if you got a ton of ripple and you're getting something, I didn't have it on AC coupling, but you shouldn't be getting it on the amperage. So, and they both kind of matched each other when one push, one pull. So, I mean, they line up with each other. But what I did is I just used the scope. I found the weakest cylinder with the RC test, went right to the weakest cylinder, dropped the camera down in at a Borescope. I see it looks like the wrist pin's walking forward. These Fords, they have a big thrust bearing, and it looks like the crank's walking forward. It looks to me like a wrist pin anyway. And I only checked the one cylinder, and a lot of blow by, a lot of heavy wear on this thing. But questions is a lot of waveforms I've taken off of Fords, they had the triple strike ignition or something similar, and you see like a very, very strong initial, and then a couple is your intensity drops down on the sequential strikes. But this just got a cap, a rotor, one coil, new wires, new plugs, and so at the end I ended up taking I just put the pickup for the spark plug wire. I put it over the coil wire, and just to take a look at all 8. And it was rising and falling just like the triple strikes, which struck me kind of odd. And there's some weird oscillations on there. And I mean, these are old, these are obsolete. It's EEC4, I believe, the EEC4 ignition system. And I might have been seeing something has to do with the pickup at its new distributor. I mean, it could have tons of wiring issues. I mean, I don't know, but if anybody else could explain this, because I've seen it a few times, but it's, not too experienced on using a scope on an older, obsolete style like that. But what I did is I do a little research on my own. After I see something like that I don't understand, I'll try to look at some no good ones, look in Paul Danner's book. I mean, see if there's any YouTube videos. I mean, just a lot of regular websites that'll have like ignition waveforms, and don't really find a lot on this. It's, going for I even put like, bad RC, bad 40, C4, secondary waveforms. But, hey, if you guys got any input, please put in, because I've seen a couple times like at the Ford's rise and fall, but it's usually a triple strike. There's usually no wave rolling with it. But I'll show you what I mean. I transferred some files to my tablet, so I'm going to use like the Hscope, the images I saved, and I'll just roll around and show you what I mean. But like I said, on one hand, the scope got me right to a bad hole and say, you're done. I mean, this is, don't put no more money in this. But you still got questions. If some of you guys have seen this, please, drop a comment. Let me know what you think. And, even if you're just taking a guess, I mean, I've put together quite a few possibilities in my head, but I'm just not knowing, you know, exactly what I'm looking at. So if you guys want to contribute, please feel free. Drop me a comment. All right, guys. I'll be back. It's a little different way of doing things. I took the case off my tablet, so I noticed sometimes the voice is muted on the tablet. But this is the engine I was looking at. You know, he had a lot of things done to this. There was the end result, but he had a new distributor in it. But I mean, look at the battery, the cable. This is one of the reasons why I was thinking some of the AC voltage could be because there was a ground somewhere up further by the intake. It's things unplugged, but the ground goes. He told me it wouldn't run without this wire attached to it. But they didn't put it back to the block. They put it to the alternator. I mean, is that too close for a block ground? Being as it is, everything grounded to the block. When you unplug this wire, it loses its ground. So, you know, should it be back there where Ford put it? I'd think so. But I mean, look at this battery too. I mean, there wasn't much going on here to save. There's a new distributor. I mean, he put 3 new fuel injectors in it. He had the other 5. They're ultra power and cheapest ones on Rock Auto. I mean, fuel injectors aren't going to fix this, but he has a newer coil in it. He had to do all this repair. I mean, he did a lot of things to it that a lot of it was just, you know, waste of time and money, actually. And he paid somebody to do all this too. But whenever I did the RC test, that's the one reason, because I did it on voltage first. I was thinking maybe at ripple I was seeing something coming out of the alternator. So I put the amp clamp on it. That's the green trace. Because actually that would need inverted. But it, you know, quickly you could see the, you know, the voltage goes down as the amperage increases. So it doesn't look, and it repeats every 8. So what I'm thinking in my head is this truly is what I'm looking at, right? You know, because it seems to repeat, but it's a falling. And so I figured I'd figure out where the cylinders were, which one was which. So then I added just inductive, you know, HT25, just pickup for the secondary ignition. And, okay, now we loaded with that. Now this would be amperage here, number 1 channel, so it should need inverted. Okay, so as I looked at that, actually the green chase looks like, but this is completely dry. There's no fuel. So we're not going to see a burn line. But it's firing both ways, almost like a wave spark, but it's just a single coil. Actually, the green would need inverted too. Or the yellow, yes, it is inverted, I'm sorry. But as we see, it doesn't collapse on the ground side every time, so this is the way I oriented it. And then whenever I switched over to identify the cylinders, I put the firing order in. And then what I was going by is not the straight up line, because you can see that coil's not collapsing. It's not firing until it gets to the one right beside it. So what I was taking this at was, actually I did line it up with, I'm sorry guys, this is the first time I really used these rulers like this. And it's actually pretty neat how it got me to where I wanted to be, but I mean, I think it was a lot of it was just blind luck, to tell you the truth, because I used this as number 1, the leading edge right here. but that coil isn't collapsing, so the spark shouldn't really happen. I was counting on it breaking right here, and this would actually be the spark. So I was identifying this cylinder as number 1. Whenever I move this into another firing event, I'll get the one closest to it. I'm trying to use a mouse. Sometimes you're better off just using your finger like that. Okay, so this would have been, I know the red's a little bit hard to see with it, but if I was doing, I put the forward firing order in it. So number 1, I was counting on being this one, and the lowest of all of them was the next one, would be number 5. As you go down, number 5's always dropping down. Number 7 doesn't look good all the time right here. I mean, it looked very weird. So the first thing I wanted to do, once I identified this one as the low one, is number 5, what I did is I pulled the spark plug out and dropped the cam in there. And let me find what... These are all the pictures. Okay, here's the actual movie from the rail cam. And see these gouges over here? Well, I'm sorry about the way it shakes. These spark plugs aren't straight up. They're on an angle, and it's, you know, it's not that hard to get an image, but the stability is always a problem. But look at these gouges. If I could pause this and just go back a tiny bit. The first thing I seen when I looked in here was these gouges, and I was, you know, thinking, you know, broken ring, anything like that. But look at the distance in between them, and look how the top is round. So I'm thinking a wrist pin. This thing was walking forward, and that's a wrist pin digging into it. Either that or a broken ring. I'm not sure which it would be, but it's lined up with the eyebrows, and it's right where the wrist pin would be. And we could see all along here. I mean, here's where you'd expect to see a little bit of wear, but there's no crosshatch left. It's shiny the whole way around, so you know the piston's moving around. From side to side, like, you know, going in line with the wrist pin, it's going to rock and swing a little bit. And that's where you usually get your wear from the skirt, from it swinging side to side. But this has wear and shininess going forward also. So, you know, right away, you know, motor's junk. I mean, look at those gouges. Those are... So I figured the thrust bearings out on the main bearings. It did once it was warm, it did make a rapping sound, but he just put heavier oil in it, he told me. But this is all just... you know, messing around in a garage. You know, basically, I mean, you're getting used to using your tools, but sometimes whenever you do see a job the whole way to the completion, you know what you saw, and you know you way to end of it. Like, you know, if you see it again, you know what you're looking for. But this, I'm not really going to see the end of this one. It just had a couple anomalies in the waveforms that I wasn't too sure about. I did some looking online, and I didn't find much. I noticed this part here, the valve, it looks like it's seated the whole way. And then as you go around to this side, looks like it's open a little bit. These valves don't look good. I mean, there's a lot of carbon in there. And as we could see on the bottom of it, where the pistons, I mean, blow by, this engine's getting a lot of blow by. So it's getting, I can see here the whole way around it. It's shiny like a mirror the whole way around. That's why I had to double check, but you could see gouges everywhere along it. I wanted to make sure again that, you know, I just wasn't seeing a mirror image of the valve reliefs and the pistons. But that explained that. I mean, that's how quick just finding the lowest cylinder. And I did take a manual compression of it. It was like 110 pounds. I mean, that's passable, but I was in the truck and that was after 4 or 5 cranks. I didn't see what the initial one was. And no, there, you know, you're done. This engine's done. I quit even looking at ignition, anything like that. But me being the glutton for punishment, I figured I'm going to just take secondary coming straight off of the coil. And this is where I'm going to need some of you guys' input that have seen this before, because it's just, it makes no sense to me the way things repeat. And let me load that one. This is just a secondary ignition coming straight off the coil. Now look how, I believe I do need to invert that. Yes. Okay, now I've seen on Ford, usually the coil over plugs or the coil packs, they were triple strikes. Now, this is just a simple distributor cap rotor single coil. Some of the things that started looking interesting was like, I mean, you can tell these are very, very lean upticks at the end. But look at the burn time differences. I mean, that could be from the injector. I mean, he changed some, like I said, but I mean, whenever I do something like this, I just assume it's going to be fixed, or, you know, what is the real problem going on. And this would be a great clue. I mean, if you were actually trying to diagnose this car for, because if you just did the burn time of that cylinder. Now, I didn't label or identify these cylinders. I mean, that would have been helpful, but I could have just put the pickup on each plug wire till I found, you know, whichever one I was looking for. But the thing is nothing stays the same. That's what, but if we look at that's 2.48 milliseconds of burn time. I mean, it's a little bit high, but it would actually be good. You never complain about that. And, you know, if anything, it's a little bit long. Now this one here, now one might be on the cylinder that he changed the fuel injector on at 1.84. So that one's, you know, about, oh, roughly like, you know, 0.75 difference somewhere in there of burn milliseconds of burn time. I mean, that definitely is going to change the way an engine runs. I mean, the balance of it. And the injectors, I noticed he got black injectors. This was the pink Ford injectors. And I remember back in the day, they had tan ones. And you were better off going to a junkyard and getting a good one and, you know, buying a new one if you weren't going to get a Ford one. But they had to be the same color. Now, are these Ultra Power, the cheap Rock Auto ones, are they all black or should they have been pink? But, you know, he has 3 pink injectors and 5 black injectors. So that could be one of the problems of the burn time. So I didn't really worry about that as much, but what am I seeing here? It doesn't repeat all the time. Let me get rid of these cursors for right now. I mean, some of you guys have seen this before, probably laughing at me, but, you know, these are questions that I have, and if I see this again, but I mean, why isn't this repeating like it is? I mean, we have oscillations after the fire, so we have oscillations here. So that should be the energy it's left in the coil after the spark line. After the spark burns everything in the combustion chamber, you still have energy left in the coil. So that's good. It's, I think they say 3 or 4, you should see, we'll call that one 3. But we're still not down to ground. We're still not down to 0. And then we can see here, there's more oscillations. Now, is this picking up another coil firing? The energy going back into the coil? But then see, as we go up, and this you could call turbulence, you could call, I'm not measuring, you know, kilovolts, anything like that, but it doesn't repeat. I see a couple straight up misfires, very lean conditions here, but how the pattern rises and falls, almost like a triple strike, but these are not, it's not the same amount every time. And if this is ground, this keeps lifting the whole way. Look at some of the firing lines. Way up and some way down. But I know that with this kind of ignition, there's an ignition control module, but is ground issue? I mean, I'd definitely be looking at grounds. After even hearing that that engine won't run without one ground. I mean, should be a couple ground straps going to the body there, going to the frame. You know, I believe these Fords had one in the back too, but I might be thinking 70s, not in the 90s. I mean, did get really good waveforms out of it, but it's just like, what do you make about this? You know, there's turbulence all the time, but I mean, look at the end of that. Is that so lean that the spark's breaking up, it ran out of fuel? He did check the fuel pressure. He said it was good, but I mean, I'd rule that out as turbulence if this ground wasn't, but what's it saving this power for? If this is the only time it was pulled down the ground, see how they're all different? Nothing lines up. And then we'll see these oscillations at, like, you know, weird times, like this isn't even pulled the whole way down the ground yet, and then it gets pulled down again. Maybe that's normal, but this is at idle. So that's why I was thinking maybe this thing should return to ground. Like, I've checked a lot of them, and like, I look at the difference in these oscillations here. This is a good example here. We're not even down the ground yet. Gets pulled down the ground. Oscillations as it's starting to build up. Again, more oscillations. Now, this is all cylinders firing, so this can't be another cylinder firing. Why is there oscillations, then more oscillations? That's something I'm not familiar with. Is that a, you know, I wouldn't want to call it a Ford thing, but I know the oscillations here are good. But, I mean, see how they're different every time. These are down here. Look at this one. It's going to build up oscillations and this big dip. That doesn't repeat itself. The burn line on it, straight, we got a good uptick at the end, possibly too lean. No, still looking pretty healthy actually, except this beginning part. Why is it not the same every fire? This one oscillations, this one small bit of oscillation, this one no oscillation. And then this is all at idle. I did rev it, and that's where, I mean, you do get a lot of misses, but look at the difference in now is this a good one? This is pulled down the ground. Is this one he put a new injector in? It burnt right, nice uptick, good oscillations. But whenever it goes to pull down for the next coil, it's not even, you know, well, it's not quite on ground, put it that way. Some of these start returning to ground, but look how low the firing line is. That doesn't repeat every 8 either, so I'm thinking, you know, there's something definitely going on with the fuel. But the firing, why does this ignition work like that? I mean, look at this. Same kind of thing, but why do we have this uptick here? That's before the coil goes to fire. Is that something in the rotor? You know, the coil should still be building here, so I was almost thinking this is like it jumping the gap in the rotor, but it shouldn't be in that time. It should build and then, you know, actually when it collapses, maybe that's what that is. I mean, I'm not sure. I haven't done much scope work on, you know, conventional ignitions. That all seems to be the newer cars that I use the scope for. Like this one, that Quicko was nice, just going straight to that hole, saying this engine's done. You know what I mean? But Look at some of the breakup and the difference in burn times. The firing KV's all over the place. It doesn't repeat in anything. But now we should be down. I don't believe this is the one I revved it on. There should be one I revved it on. It should be the same one. But see how there's no consistency. Look at even the different. I don't know. What do you think, guys? I mean, it was interesting for certain. Nope, I gotta go back to the invert. And the rev should have been at the end. We should see the cylinders getting. Again, here we could definitely see some. Colleen, that one fires at the end compared to. And the engine running, yeah, I mean, it shakes a lot. I mean, you could tell this engine's not in balance. And if that compression was right, yes, it's way out of sync. You're going to get a vibration, but you can see some of the tops of the lines. And the coil's definitely firing, it's definitely burning on them. They're not. There's a couple that don't go as high at any given time. But this is the main part I was wondering about. If anybody knows, I mean, is this common? But look at the difference even on here compared to here. If this is it jumping the rotor, see, that's why I don't believe it can be that, because this has a line here. Look how much longer this one is. That gap should be even on a brand new cap and rotor. And then if you look here, it doesn't have that platform at all. Then here we do with a major oscillation in front of it. But the coil still fires. Got a fairly high kV. I mean, lower than a lot of the other ones. But this, it still fires. It still has energy left. But its kV isn't as high as the one before. Let's find another one with a big oscillation in front of it. And see if it has, okay, this one has a major oscillation here. Look how low the firing line is. Again, is this the same cylinder? Okay, we'll say this one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This would be it. No, this would be it again. With an oscillation. Let me double check out. It's nice to have these cylinder identifiers, but even though we don't know which one it is, I'm just going after the one with the oscillation. We're going to call it number 1. And then you're going to go got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, I moved that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1. Okay, so this one's the one we want to identify as 1 again. And it's moving a little bit on me, so let me double check. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. Okay. So this will keep identifying this cylinder as 1. Okay, 1 has a major oscillation right here. scaling's off, because what's this one then? If we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm sorry guys, bear with me. We're going to count this as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. Oh, okay, it took I had the 8-cylinder and it took me down to 4 again. I'm not sure the firing order of this. I'm sorry, that was my problem. I wasn't seeing cylinders that I knew were there. Okay, now we're going to label this one 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. Okay, so we could see on this one, it's 1 has a major oscillation here. 1 has a major oscillation here. 1, same thing, major oscillation right here. These ones don't seem to have it. And then these are interesting too. Not that in. Okay, there we go. We have major oscillations that whenever the energy is left in the coil, but then we have another oscillation. And then we go up to this. And this right here is the part that, if anybody knows what this is this the rotor gap? Is that it jumping? And there's just 1. Every time we repeat the 8-cylinder, every time that 1 cylinder repeats, there we go with the oscillation again on number 1. Keep going down. There's 1 there. Here's 1 again. Another major oscillation, but it is firing. Does have energy left. Pulls down the ground, fires again. All right, guys, that was just the question I had. I mean, would you be able to look at this waveform and say, I know what this is? I did, look for some research on it. I couldn't even find anywhere the pattern repeats like this, the up and down and never getting pulled the whole way to ground in here. So, you could even look further down as you zoom out. Look at 1 again. 1 has this major oscillation. So what I'd do in there is either, you could sink 1 with a fuel injector or just keep moving your pickup around till you found this cylinder. And then, do a little bit more investigating. And that would have told you what it was, then I'd know. But I mean, I don't think I would ever got to the bottom of all, what is this? All right, guys, so drop me a message in the comments if you know anything about this, if you got any information or tips for me on that. Just something I found, I figured I'd share. I know a lot of you guys are in these scopes a lot, and a lot of you guys are just learning, but hey, you might have used a scope one time in this and found out that that's, this is a, bad rotor, this is a bad cap, this is a bad, ignition control module, corrupted pip signal. I don't know, but it's firing too good for that, I believe. But all right, I hope you enjoyed a little bit of that and got some answers for me, because even though there's no end for this for me, I'm not going to see what fixed this engine. I'm still looking, see if I find anything on the, good channels out there, guys doing, really advanced work. And but everything I've seen doesn't look nothing like this. So I just keep looking. I mean, just in case it ever happens again to me, I know where to go. All right, guys, thanks a lot for being here. Have a good one. Adios. All right, that's through, and at the end, the manual compression I did on, just so you could hear how the engine sounds spinning. Hey, everything's a good learning experience, but the main thing is his neighbor put this engine in for him. They got it. It's supposed to be low miles, so I mean, that engine's been around a while. Yeah, there's not too many good ones that he's still out there used to just pick up like that, but this kid, whenever a mechanic tells you that You know, you just paid for a low mileage engine. You start thinking that the base parts are right, so you just start dumping money in everything else, you know, thinking that you got a good bottom end, you got a good top end. This thing had a lot of problems. He said the neighbor bent push rods, everything. I mean, if them push rods aren't all down right, I mean, you're not going to have the right compression every time. Valves are going to be opening different. Yeah, but the main thing is you get to this, you get to the point, you know, you're done. Yeah, that motor's not going to, you know, the rest of the injectors aren't going to fix it. They were stripped out bolts on the intake, the upper intake, but now, after hearing the way that sounds, I even entertained, like, you know, possibility that the starter's not turning right either, but would the starter repeat every 8 cylinders? You know, I don't think that your starter isn't timed. It's not timed to a particular cylinder, you know, so I think the compression really is right, and the wave was just the way that engine runs. And I mean, running it, it sounds like how that waveform looks. It up and down, up and down, up and down. Like, you know, this thing's bucking like a pony, but it's, you know, at high speed it does miss. I mean, I've caught the misses on with the scope, but, you know, it's going to like that. But, you know, something electronic might fix a couple things on it, but, you know, let me hear your theories, or is it just a spent motor? All right, guys, I'm gone for good again. Adios.